Now, like many hard-working Australians, you may be a member of an industry super fund. It's your nest egg, supposedly, for your retirement. You contribute money regularly and you assume that those managing your funds have your best financial interests at heart. But do they?
Well, as the Australian Financial Review reported on Thursday, Treasury's first Labor-directed consultation is canvassing the abolition of the requirement for funds to provide itemised lists of certain expenses and political donations and payments to industrial bodies.
Now, this is important because Australia's superannuation sector is worth a massive $3 trillion. And Labor and the unions, many of whose officials sit on the boards of industry super funds, are desperate for your cash. As The Australian reported last year, 23 of the nation's leading industry funds spent $9.8 million in members' money in 2019-20 on directors' fees, sponsorships, and major advertising deals with, guess who? The unions. That's close to a 100% increase over the previous 5 years. And the largest single amount was, quote, a $2.04 million payment to the CFMEU.
Oh.
Unbelievable. Not bad work if you can get it. But instead of itemising donations and the like, now funds will only have to list the total amount. The official reason for these reforms is that it will reduce the regulatory burden on funds. Right. But as the Fin's Michael Rodden observed last month, what tosh. The funds will themselves still need to tabulate each itemised instance of spending in order to provide an aggregate. The only difference is that members won't have the benefit of seeing it.
And the winding back of accountability provisions doesn't stop there. When in government, the Coalition introduced measures that compelled fund directors to prove they were acting in the best financial interests of their members. Labor wants to remove that too, a move that surprised even the ABC, who would even question a requirement that super funds act in the best financial interests of their members, wrote economist Peter Martin last week. Labor's new Assistant Treasurer, Stephen Jones, that's who.
Stephen Jones. Well, it's not going to surprise you one bit to learn that before he became an MP, Jones was National Secretary of one of Australia's biggest unions. And no, Rita, Rowan, there's more. It's also not going to surprise you that in his parliamentary maiden speech, Jones singled out, guess who? The CFMEU and the Maritime Union of Australia for their help in his campaign. Oh, well done.
Well, credit to you, Assistant Treasurer. You're obviously a man who believes in paying your debts, which in your case is to the unions. And this is how desperate he was to run protection for industry funds' questionable spending. Last year, Jones claimed the legislative onus on fund directors to prove they were acting in the best financial interests of members was, well, see for yourself.
Now, normally a reverse onus in law is something that is only confined to the most egregious of criminal offences. We don't, for example, apply a reverse onus for heinous sex crimes. We don't apply a reverse onus for heinous drug crimes. But apparently, not having your books in order is a worse offence than a serious sex offence.
That is just such alarmist equivalence. The onus on directors is an administrative protection, not a criminal charge. This is how desperate Labor and the unions are to hide the extent of industry super funds spending on the unions, with the ACTU claiming last year, with a reverse onus of proof test, the legislation contains provisions that will lump trustee directors into the same camp as terrorists.
Utter tosh. But here's why this is important. It's your money that is being ripped off, and it is Labor that's allowing it. Ironically, though, Jones himself tweeted this week, quote, "It's great to be part of a government that's firmly focused on delivering Transparency and accountability. Yes, he really wrote that. The Albanese government is delivering on labor commitments and labor values. Well, they sure are.
Delivering on labour commitments and labour values. Right, you can say that again.